Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming both in person and online to talk about some limited deer hunting opportunities that we're proposing. And so I'm going to emphasize proposal. No decision has been made, but we're bringing it forward to the public for comment. We'll start with introduction. So I'm Erin Halcomb. I'm the stewardship coordinator for the land bank. Your comments will be going straight to me, and we'll be doing a summary of those. But I'd like my partners, other land bank staff, to introduce yourself, please.
Good evening. I'm Peter Guillaume. I'm the reserve steward on Orcas in land bank.
Here. Lincoln Borman, land bank director.
I'm Margot Thorpe. I'm the outreach assistant, and I'll be helping with our Zoom participants tonight.
Tyler Goodman, Orcas field assistant.
And I'm Anne Marie Shanks. I'm one of the land bank commissioners for District 2.
Next.
Hi, my name is Brandon Rugen. I'm the Region 4 Department of Fish and Wildlife private land biologist. And in certain situations like this where there's partnerships that we're trying to form, sometimes the program I'm involved in gets tasked with helping facilitate and try to bring it to fruition. So our role would be to help bring this forward into implementation.
I'm Kurt License. I'm the district wildlife biologist for Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and my area of responsibility is San Juan County, Island County, and Snohomish County.
Good evening, everybody. Tino Villaluz. I represent Swinomish Indian tribal community. I work closely with all the area tribes and the Department of Fish and Wildlife in a co-management role. I'm also a tribal member and been a part of the broader community my entire life. So welcome and thank you.
Name again, please.
Tino Villaluz.
Hi there, Chris Madsen. I work for the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission. Our agency supports 20 Western Washington Free Tribes, so I'm here to help out and assist where I'm needed.
I'm Ralph Downs, Fish and Wildlife Enforcement Program, and I'm here to make sure Kurt and Brandon make it out soon.
Dave Jones, I'm a game warden, and I'm here to help Ralph make sure that everything goes. We're told there's gonna be some rough people here today, so we're just here to make sure it all goes good with your shit.
Hey.
Is there anyone here from the DNR?
No, sir. And so next, Margot, I'm just seeing it's not advancing. So I wonder if on my computer, I'm on the meeting agenda page.
Just a general request.
Yes.
Whoever's speaking, please speak loudly.
Okay.
Clearly for the back of your.
And if you don't hear, just will you remind, we start the mumble. Okay, well, briefly, I wanted to provide an overview of the evening. We're gonna do we did our introductions. I'll dive into the land bank's proposal. We'll hear more about how we arrived at this from Kurt and then also Chris and Tino. So that'll be about 45 minutes, we're estimating. And then the whole second half of the meeting, we do want to hear from you. We're going to ask that questions go first while we have all these professionals in the room to really clarify any questions you have. And then comments will be reserved for the last half of the meeting. And again, this isn't your only opportunity to comment. So we do want to hear from everyone. And then Margot, do you want to offer how it'll go for our online?
Yeah, for our online participants, they'll have the opportunity to chime in as well. And so for short questions or comments, they can write in a chat, which I'm working to get up right now. For longer comments or questions, we'd like to ask the online participants to raise their hand in Zoom, and that will form a queue for us to call on them in order.
Do you want to introduce your orange page?
Oh, and we will be keeping time. Did we decide on 3 minutes per
so,
question
yeah,
or
let's-
comment? And instead of interrupting you, once you hit the 3 minutes, I'll just hold up the color as an indicator that you need to wrap it up. Okay.
Okay. And then stepping even further back, this is kind of the bigger context for where we are. We began talking about deer hunting with DFW and the co-managers in February of 2024. We've done site visits last year, and we received a formal recommendation from Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission January this year. So here we are at our public meeting. And then again, we have a public comment period until April 6th. We'll be summarizing, cataloging all of the comments for a summary document that we will present to our land bank commissioners and others for review and recommendation. And then beyond that, it gets a little dicey because we haven't made any preconceived notions, but so that's the overview.
You have printouts of this?
Not with me, but it'll be recorded, and if you want, I can help get this material to you. So a general overview, San Juan County already limits the hunting methods that can be used. So we're only short range weapons, shotguns and bows here. The land bank for our proposal is asking for non-lead ammunition and safety equipment, which we'll refer to. It includes marking the boundaries, which we'll go into detail about, limiting the number of hunters that can come each day to 2. And then providing a signage and orange vests, and also using the reservation system.
Will this be open season?
Pardon?
Will this be open season? You can shoot, you can kill anything.
Questions laid out.
No, but that's part of this.
Right, so can we hold the questions till the end, and then, yeah, the state season, will address. Thank you. So we're also here because we've done turtleback, and North Shore management plans that described the interest in deer hunting. And we also included 2 broad goals in those plans, to protect the ecological values of these natural areas and to seek opportunities to partner with tribes. Specifically now, our proposal, I'm going to get into more specifically, but we're proposing a public or a state hunting season on turtleback. And then we're also proposing a tribal hunt that could be on either turtleback or North Shore for some select dates that we'll get into. Okay, so turtleback, deep country, that's the topography lines. But specifically for this preserve, we're looking at a total area of about 450 acres. You can see that highlighted in the yellow. But we're only proposing phase 1 for 1 year to see how it goes. And then we'll look at, if successful, a phase 2. The user group for turtleback, one user group would be the public. We've asked for early modern season for blacktail. This is roughly October. The dates flex every year. I think these dates are from last year, the 11th through the 31st. And then this program for the state would be managed by the state's reservation system, which means that hunters log on. We're limiting it to 1 hunting party of only 2 people. So for context, phase 1, that huntable area is about 250 acres. So within that unit, we're talking about only allowing 2 people that have come together, that have made a reservation to hunt that area. Again, with the general safety, the boundaries Seeing the waiting.
I know, having some.
Okay. Boundaries will be at least 100 feet from, neighboring properties, from trails. Once we get on the ground more, we'll be able to work with our partners for safe sight lines and, other options. So we're currently proposing that Turtleback Preserve would remain open to recreationalists while hunting season is in place. So these, if you choose, we would have the orange vests at the trailheads. And that would be for both early modern and in November.
Is that a bulletproof vest?
It's in a high visibility orange, yeah. So the North Shore Preserve. This preserve is 58 acres. When we've done the boundaries for protection of neighboring properties and then also the beach, this preserve is about it would reduce to a hunting area of 48 acres. What's different with here is that we propose completely closing the preserve November 1st through the 18th to provide only tribal hunting opportunities. So the tribal hunting proposal that we received included November 1st through the 18th, inclusive of both North Shore and Turtleback. So during those dates, tribal hunters could go to either preserve. North Shore would be closed. We're still currently proposing that Turtleback would remain open. And I guess, also for context, that first phase 1 hunting area for Turtleback is about 3 to 4 of North Shore preserves. So it's a much larger area. This program coordination for the tribes, whether it be on Turtleback or North Shore, would take a similar framing as the public season, where there's a reservation system, there's a limit of 2 hunters, but it would allow for 2 consecutive days, whereas the Turtleback is a little different. Boundaries again would be marked, signage that the preserve is closed. The beach would remain open. So for those of you that have been to North Shore, there's kind of steep bluff and then the beach. So we were proposing that beach walkers could maintain that, and the uplands would be closed. So why are we doing this? You can believe us, we wondered, why have we complicated our lives? But it's because we think it's important, an important discussion to have. And 3 primary reasons: to protect the ecology of our natural areas, to honor tribal treaty rights, provide greater access for cultural use, and increase local access to ethically sourced food. And because we do this on other islands and it's been successful. So we have successful programs on Mount Grant and San Juan and Lopez Hill on Lopez. So Kurt's going to dive into the ecology, which I'm grateful for. But we are working with knowns that excessive herbivory does decline biodiversity, and it's been documented here, particularly island environments. This photo shows an exclosure on Turtleback. Maybe some of you have been to Yellow Island or some of our outer islands. Some pretty different vegetation. Also speaking to ecology, one of the papers that calls for a more national view at this is that we also don't take lethal means lightly. The alternative is what we've seen: viruses, cars, and the decline of many other species. So this comes from another paper. I also want to say that we acknowledge that these limited hunting opportunities are not fixing the islands or the county's problem, right? But they're a step in reducing herbivory in select areas that can have local effects. We're also doing this to support cultural connections to the land. We've heard from individuals that want more opportunities to hunt. We want to better acknowledge tribes' treaty rights and the increasing concern about the effects of outdoor recreation on public lands. And in terms of safe recreation, another way I've been thinking about this, in part because a lot of people are very concerned about recreating on turtleback while it's early modern season, is that approximately 6 weeks out of the year, that space would be shared with those user groups, which allows another 42 weeks to hike, bike, or ride your horse without hunters. Again, this is Lopez Hill and Mount Grant, where we have successful programs that we've modeled and we've learned a lot from, and we've modeled this program after, including using the reservation system, marking property boundaries, providing high visibility vests. And so I'm just going to end it there and turn it over. Here's some of my favorite photos from our preserves, the wildlife on Turtleback and North Shore. If you want to learn more about Lopez Hill and San Juan, we have that on the website, as well as very specific maps and other things. We'll upload this presentation to it and eventually our public comment summary. So I think that's all for me, and Kurt, to introduce you.
Kurt, could you say again where you're from?
Yeah, so I'm Kurt License and I work with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm the district wildlife biologist for our Region 4, which includes San Juan County, Island County, and Snohomish County.
Thank you.
Sorry, which one was it?
The left one.
I'm just gonna make sure our online participants can see it and then.
All right, can everyone see that all right? Excellent.
Not the heading.
Oh, well, the heading is Deer Ecosystems and Stewardship on Orcas Island. So
We struggled to get rid of that bar across the screen.
I'll plan on just reading the titles as long as I get a couple more minutes for my talk, because I was.
Yeah, you try to get rid of it on your computer, but
Nah, no big deal.
it is.
That you did that just a second ago.
Me trying.
So many buttons.
I'm afraid to touch it.
Let's go escape, and then we're gonna go back over to, I think it was a Zoom setting you figured out.
Sorry, everybody.
Well, I will answer a question while we're working this out. So you asked if it was an open season. So during the general modern season for black-tailed deer that this would overlap with, the current bag limit is any sex deer. So it could be antlered or antlerless. There would also be overlapping periods for a second deer permit that is antlerless only. So that means that people could harvest an antlered or an antlered deer. And if they had their second deer permit tag, they could also harvest an extra antlerless.
What I was getting at was young deer,
Okay.
less than a year old.
Mhm.
That's open season. You can shoot anything.
You could shoot a younger deer,
You can
yeah,
shoot anything.
as an antlerless. No antlers. Maybe we'll hold the rest of the questions until the last of it, since we're up and running now. Is that, okay, excellent. All right, so tonight we're here to talk about deer ecology on Orcas and to explain the science that informs wildlife management decisions. We'll also review themes associated with a proposal currently being explored by the San Juan County Conservation Land Bank. And in collaboration with WDFW, treaty tribes, And it's something that could allow limited hunting, deer hunting opportunities on Turtleback Preserve and North Shore Preserve. The purpose of this presentation is threefold. First, I want to explain what we know scientifically about deer populations in island ecosystems like the San Juan Islands. And second, I want to discuss why wildlife managers sometimes consider population management tools. And third, I want to address common questions and considerations associated with deer hunting. Throughout this presentation, we'll focus on ecosystem health, scientific research, and collaborative stewardship of conservation lands. You already know, but we're asking that questions be held to the end of the presentations. All right, so again, this meeting is part of an ongoing public process being conducted by the Land Bank. Before we get started, I also want to acknowledge our tribal partners. Tribal natural resource managers have been stewarding these lands and wildlife for generations, and their knowledge and perspectives are extremely beneficial. We're fortunate to have here with us Tino from the Swinomish tribe, who leads their wildlife program, and Chris Madsen, a wildlife program manager with Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission. They have combined decades of experience managing wildlife in the area and can help provide valuable insight and context. Also, thank you to all tribal nations in attendance and for taking the time to participate in this important discussion. Research across the San Juan Islands has shown that when black-tailed deer populations become very dense, they can overbrowse native plants and alter ecosystems. Those ecological concerns have led land and resource managers to consider opportunities for population management that would be beneficial on certain conservation lands. The proposal being discussed could allow limited deer hunting opportunities in specific areas using specific equipment during specific times of the year. The intent is not to broadly expand hunting access, but to explore whether carefully managed harvests could help restore ecological balance in these habitats. And equally important, tonight's meeting is an opportunity for dialogue. Community input is a key part of wildlife management and helps inform future decisions. Island ecosystems often function differently than mainland ecosystems. On the mainland, deer populations are influenced by predators like wolves, bears, cougars, and coyotes, as well as broader hunting pressure across large landscapes. In the San Juan Islands, those natural and implemented management controls are largely absent. Black-tailed deer are also highly adaptable and reproduce efficiently. Female deer commonly give birth to 1 or 2 fawns each year, and survival rates can be relatively high in mild coastal climates. Another factor is movement between islands. Black-tailed deer are strong swimmers and have been commonly documented swimming between the islands in the Salish Sea. Here's a video of one that I got last fall of a buck swimming to Lopez Island. Because of these factors, deer populations on islands can grow quickly and sometimes reach densities much higher than those typically observed on mainland ecosystems and beyond what sensitive habitats can sustain. Ecologists use the concept of carrying capacity to describe the number of animals that a landscape can support without degrading the ecosystem. When deer populations grow in density, they consume large amounts of vegetation, particularly young plants and tree seedlings based on their palatability. Research has shown that high browsing pressure can reduce forest regeneration and change the composition of plant communities. These changes can ripple through the ecosystem, and plants form the foundation of habitat for insects, birds, and many other species. When plant communities are altered, other species that depend on them can also decline. A large body of ecological research shows that high deer densities can significantly alter forest ecosystems. For example, studies of forest ecosystems in eastern North America found that long-term deer browsing can reduce plant species richness by as much as 50% over time when browsing pressure remains high. In heavily browsed forests, the shrubs and wildflowers that grow beneath the tree canopy can be reduced by 60 to 90% compared to the areas protected from deer. One of the best-known studies in our region comes from work from Tara Martin and Peter Orcas examining islands in the Gulf and San Juan archipelagos. Their research found that deer strongly influence bird communities because many songbirds rely on understory vegetation for nesting and feeding. On islands with little or no deer, several bird species were dramatically more abundant. Specifically, rufous hummingbirds were about 9 times more abundant. Varied thrush were about 29 times more abundant. Spotted towhees were about 25 times more abundant. Further, by selectively consuming the more palatable native plants, heavy deer browsing shifts vegetative communities towards landscapes with less plant diversity, dominated by unpalatable, invasive, and non-native plants. These kinds of cascading ecological effects are why wildlife managers evaluate deer populations, not just in terms of numbers, but also in terms of ecosystem impacts. Ecologists have tried to estimate approximate deer densities where ecosystem impacts begin to occur. A widely cited review by Cody and colleagues in the Journal of Annual Review of Ecology found that impacts to forest vegetation often begin to appear when deer densities exceed about 8 to 15 deer per square kilometer. Above that range, browsing pressure can begin to suppress regeneration of tree seedlings and reduce plant diversity. When densities reach 20 to 40 deer per square kilometer, ecological impacts such as loss of understory vegetation and changes to wildlife habitat become increasingly common. These numbers are not exactly thresholds, but they provide useful benchmarks for wildlife managers when evaluating habitat conditions. Island ecosystems can be even more sensitive because plants evolved with fewer large herbivores. Results from a local study by Martin et al. In 2011 suggest that deer densities below a threshold of 10 deer per square kilometer, or 1 deer in about every 20 football fields of land, should allow native vegetation to recover and rich and diverse bird species assemblages to persist. Considering this research, if we were all to close our eyes and imagine how many deer would be on a random tract of land on Orcas of about 20 football fields in size, would it be 1 deer or more? If it was more than 1 deer, then island habitats in those areas are trending towards less biodiversity. A useful example of how deer populations behave on islands comes from a long-term research project on Blakely Island to the south. In a recent study, Long et al. Conducted long-term monitoring of black-tailed deer populations and vegetation dynamics on the island. They estimated that deer densities on Blakely Island reached approximately 44 deer per square kilometer at their peak. Even after a decline associated with habitat changes and a severe winter storm, densities on Blakely Island were still estimated around 20 deer per square kilometer in 2021. Researchers also found that deer density was strongly linked to vegetation patterns. And as forests matured and forests declined, deer densities gradually decreased from starvation and malnourishment, but browsing pressures still influence ecosystem processes. One of the most common questions I get is how many deer are there on Orcas Island? Great question. And the honest answer is we do not have an exact number, which is not uncommon in wildlife management, especially in places like Orcas. Dense forests, complex terrain, and mixed land ownership makes traditional methods like aerial surveys or distance sampling very difficult to do accurately. But here's the important part. We don't need an exact number to know whether a population is too high or unbalanced. Instead, we use multiple indicators together. Harvest trends are one of those and are used as a proxy to infer population status, but has limitations, which can reflect varying levels of hunter effort, limited access, limited harvest opportunity. A noteworthy piece of this graph is the rapid rebound in harvest circled in red following the 2020 adenovirus hemorrhagic disease outbreak, or AHD outbreak, even though hunter effort significantly decreased post-outbreak. A second indicator, habitat impacts. Through a multi-island study between San Juan and the Gulf Islands, we're seeing clear ecological impacts like native plant diversity declines of 38 to 55% to 85%, reduced forest regeneration, and impacts of species that depend on habitats as the deer density increases. A third indicator are disease events like the AHD outbreak in 2020, and often associate with populations that are too dense because the causative virus is transmitted by direct contact between deer through bodily fluid and possible airborne routes. More deer equals more contacts. Regional density comparisons are also useful, like what Long et al. Found on Blakely for the approximately 20 deer per square kilometer or more, even though deer supporting land use practices like agriculture and development are more prevalent on Orcas. So while we don't have a single number, all these indicators point in the same direction. Deer populations are exceeding what the habitat can support. The good news is that wildlife managers have several tools available when addressing deer population imbalances, some of which have proven to be more effective and efficient than others. Regulated hunting is the most widely used tool across North America because it can reduce populations efficiently and sustainably. There's already a carefully regulated statewide management mechanism in place for hunting. It provides a local and sustainable food source for families and simultaneously generates data useful for population management and generates conservation funding through license sales and federal excise taxes under the Pittman-Robertson Act. For these reasons, most wildlife agencies rely on regulated hunting as a major component of an adaptive management strategy. Other methods, such as fertility control or translocation, are sometimes discussed but are typically impractical at large landscape scales for several reasons, including the high expense associated with implementation. For fertility control to stabilize or reduce deer populations, researchers estimate that 60 to 90% of adult females must be treated every year or semi-annually, depending on the drugs that are used. That level of treatment is extremely difficult to achieve in a free-ranging wildlife population. In addition, some fertility control methods extend the estrus cycle of females. When that happens, females remain receptive for longer, which can attract additional males to the treatment site and potentially increase breeding activity. Further studies have found that fertility control can lead to a higher overall survival of adults, extending ecosystem impacts across time. Because of these logistical and biological challenges, fertility control is generally considered feasible only in small, highly controlled settings. And as you saw from earlier, deer swim between the islands, meaning that the islands don't represent a closed population. Similarly, translocation has significant costs and disease transmission risk associated with the effort, and relocated animals can often experience high mortality rates. Another management tool sometimes used is professional culling, where trained sharpshooters remove animals under agency supervision. Culling programs have been used in urban areas where hunting is not feasible due to safety or legal constraints. However, culling programs are typically much more expensive and labor-intensive than regulated hunting because they require trained staff, specialized equipment, and ongoing agency funding. Habitat modification, like fencing installation, may be effective in small areas, but it is also expensive, requires regular maintenance, and inhibits natural movements of a variety of wildlife while fragmenting habitats. Further, it moves the problem of overbrowsing to the end of the fence, while not reducing the root of the issue. Some mechanisms that are not in the wildlife manager's toolbox are disease and starvation. Relying on these two things to regulate deer populations can lead to prolonged animal suffering, often does not resolve any underlying ecological impacts, and does not feed families. These processes tend to occur after habitats are already degraded and populations frequently rebound if conditions remain favorable. The bottom line is that safety is the top priority. Hunting implement or firearm restrictions in San Juan County do not allow modern long-range rifles for state hunters. The only implements allowed for hunting in the county are specialized class of short-range pistols, shotguns, archery equipment, and muzzleloader rifles. State rules require hunters to wear fluorescent orange and/or fluorescent hunter pink exterior clothing during the general modern firearms season. And this fluorescent clothing must be worn above the waist and visible from all sides. In some areas, high visibility vests can be provided at kiosks like the one pictured here in the bottom left-hand side for any recreationist to borrow at trailheads during the hunting season. Hunting proposals can include defined hunting areas set back from trails and neighboring properties beyond the maximum effective range of hunting implements. In other island hunts with mixed users like on Whidbey, land managers have instituted short seasonal closures on either a portion or the entirety of a property. Boundaries of hunt areas can also be clearly marked following topographical features, natural movement routes, and added to popular hunting navigation software. The reservation system ensures that only a small number of hunters are present at any given time during the short hunting season. And all state hunting participants must also meet Washington hunter education and firearm safety requirements. This includes lessons on hunting skills, ethics, and safety requirements via an online course and an in-person field skills evaluation. These measures are designed to reduce potential conflicts between hunters and other recreationists. Another safety consideration already mentioned, but often overlooked, are deer mortalities and vehicular collisions on county roads. In 2007, San Juan County Public Works picked up 135 dead deer. In 2008, the number was 136. 2009, it was 159, and so on. Research has shown that collisions between animals and automobiles cost the world's economy billions of dollars, and targeted recreational hunting decreases deer vehicle collisions significantly while generating funding for conservation. Disease ecology is an important part of how we evaluate deer populations because disease risk often increases as populations become denser. One example already discussed is AHD, which can cause sudden die-offs and can be a canary in the coal mine, indicating overpopulation. These outbreaks are more likely when deer are concentrated, but they typically don't regulate populations long-term, since the deer numbers often rebound quickly if underlying conditions don't change. Another emerging concern in the state is chronic wasting disease, or CWD. It is a fatal disease for deer that spreads through contact and the environment, and it's difficult to control once established, and higher deer densities can increase transmission risks. While CWD hasn't been detected in Western Washington yet, managing overabundant deer populations can help control the spread. Parasites that can cause deer hair loss syndrome, like the deer pictured at the bottom right here, can also spread faster in denser populations. There are also links to human health, particularly with Lyme disease. Deer support tick populations, and research has shown that reducing deer densities from about 30 deer per square kilometer down to 8 or 10 per square kilometer can reduce tick abundance roughly 70 to 80%. In a 13-year study of a Connecticut community, the number of resident reported cases of Lyme disease per 100 households was strongly correlated to deer density in the community. Reducing deer density to 5.1 deer per square kilometer resulted in a 76% reduction in tick abundance and 80% reduction in resident reported cases of Lyme disease in the community from before to after a hunt was initiated. So when we think about deer populations, we're considering not just the animals themselves, but also disease dynamics, ecosystem health, and potential impacts to people and pets. Ultimately, the goal of wildlife management is ecosystem stewardship. Success would mean improved forest regeneration, recovery of native understory plants, and healthier habitats, excuse me, for birds, pollinators, and other wildlife. This might look like more butterflies, more chocolate lilies, more fawn lilies, camas, orchids, and more spotted towhees, to name a few. It would also look like healthier deer populations by reducing the risk of malnourishment and disease outbreaks that can occur when populations reach tipping points. People benefit by experiencing fewer automobile collisions, less ticks and tick-borne illness, and more species richness and food security through locally sourced sustainable food. As beautiful and charismatic as deer are, failing to act is a decision to favor black-tailed deer over many other species, some of which are species of greatest conservation need. And while hunting is not a silver bullet for the issue, it is a step towards a more diverse island ecosystem. Finally, success is a shared landscape, where for a few weeks a year, hunters join in caring for this place, helping ensure it remains vibrant and hospitable to all life. Thank you again for your time to learn about wildlife management, and let me spill my heart here about something that's important to me. Wildlife stewardship often involves balancing ecological science, cultural values, and community perspectives. In my experience, it's difficult to make any meaningful change for wildlife in these habitats that they depend on without community support and engagement. So your investment today is much appreciated. Your input will help inform the ongoing evaluation of this proposal and future conservation efforts in the San Juan Islands. Thank you.
While we're waiting, my name's again, Chris Matson, the Wildlife Program Manager for the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission. I've had the privilege of being in this position for about 25 years now. So it's been a good gig. I want to thank Aaron and Kurt for their presentations. They were very informative and detailed. This is going to be more like a winging it presentation. So we'll probably move through it pretty quickly.
Those are the best presentations.
I don't have any notes, so I don't need them.
That's one.
We're just gonna leave this up there. It's the-
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm gonna give a really high overhead view of tribal wildlife management and conservation. I'm not sure how many of you are aware what your knowledge is of the tribes in Washington State, but they're, wow, I can't read my own. Is there any way to make it bigger so I can read what I actually? Run, get my glasses. It's not presentation.
It keeps bringing it up with Windows. We have the idea how to,
So I'll go for this one while it's up here. Yeah, so Washington State is home to 29 federally recognized tribes. 21 are treaty tribes that reserve specific rights to fish, hunt, and gather on the traditional areas through treaties with the U.S. government in the 1850s. The Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission is a support service agency for the 20 federally recognized treaty tribes that reside in Western Washington. So wildlife management, the tribes are active wildlife managers. If I should have put it up there, but if you go to a website, northwesttreatytribes.org, I believe, it has all the work the tribes are doing. It has stories on from fisheries to habitat to wildlife. Substantial financial and staffing investments are put into these wildlife programs. Most tribes, I mean, all tribes have their wildlife programs, but they are staffed with wildlife managers, biologists, technical staff. They do research, a lot of research. I mean, if you go to that website, you'll see a lot of the work that's being done. But it goes anywhere from a small sample that through up there, population surveys, survival studies, disease testing, habitat improvement, predator monitoring. There's beaver relocations. It goes on and on. There's a lot of work that's being done. A little glimpse on tribal hunting. While tribes don't hunt under state regulations, they do have their own hunting regulations. Each tribe develops their regulations annually for their hunters. The hunting regulations and harvest is shared annually with the state.
And the tribes and state work cooperatively to manage wildlife populations to ensure they're healthy, provide harvest opportunities for both state and tribal hunters. So this is just going a little bit into how the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission is assisting the tribes on this. So the proposal that we did share, that was put together through the collaboration of the 9 Point Elliott Treaty Tribes and put together the package that Aaron shared earlier. But this is kind of how the hunt party scenario would work. The tribes don't have the reservation system that the state has, so the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission has offered to assist the tribes with their own reservation system, which would be me. So whenever it'd be set up where there'd be a hunt party, each party is limited to a maximum of 2 hunters and may hunt for 2 consecutive days on both the North Shore and Turtleback Preserves. Reservations must be made with the hunt coordinator by October 15th on the first come, first served basis. If there are additional dates that might be available that weren't reserved, then hunters may request additional hunt dates. As I said, then we'll be assisting with the coordinating the reservations. Reservation dates, hunter contact information, and tribal point of contact will be shared with the San Juan County Land Bank by late October. And questions are saved for last, so we'll just act like that's not there, because we're not there yet. But more information will be provided by Villaluz, which is I was gonna say the wildlife guy, but I was saying
That works. Yeah, again, welcome everybody. Keno Villaluz, Swinomish Indian Tribal Community. As Chris said, we ran this through a committee of all 9 Point Elliott Treaty Tribes and came up with this very limited opportunity proposal. I will not speak from here, but speak from here to you guys, and that's a little bit of a traditional teaching. But tell you why now, why am I here? Because the opportunity doesn't equate to a ton of resource for shared between 9 tribes, and likely it'll only be a couple tribes that engage, but it doesn't equate to a ton of resource. But as I've shared with some of you offline, is that it's an opportunity for a cultural reconnection. The eraser has been very effective in a mechanism of dispossession from what we equate to as our inheritance. Our inheritance are our attachment to the treaty reserve resources, and that's why in 1855, our ancestors reserved those rights. And any mechanism of separation is perpetuating dispossession. We work really hard to perpetuate something different. We represent 10,000 years of conservation, and that conservation includes hunting. Hunting is absolutely conservation. We want to live as part of the ecosystem, not apart from it. And as we saw so graphically and brutally is what can happen when overpopulation happens with the AHD outbreak. That was horrific. It came across our reservation too, which is on Fidalgo Island right there. It came through in waves and ended up devastating our deer population too. As yours has, ours has rebounded. And it shows the resilience. It shows the beautiful power of nature. But you'll hear this many times, and I'll start with what Kurt said, and that public safety is at the forefront of everything. We're evolved managers. We're a co-manager. We're committed to co-management. We have an actual signed document that says we're going to work together with the state to perpetuate opportunities like this. But public safety is at the forefront of everything we do. We try to make sure, and then as Kurt eloquently mentioned, community involvement is the only way we're going to get to those opportunities. This is a true unique opportunity. I raise my hands to the land bank and others for welcoming us, but this is the first step in a long road of reconnecting. The disconnect from the islands is a brutal history amongst the United States, its settlers, and the tribes. The beautiful thing is the tribes are still here, right? And we're still looking for that. I have a recyclable bag on my wall that I picked up at a garage sale of all places in Seattle, and it says, "I am my ancestors' wildest dream." And I don't look at that as a thought that I am something special or anything, but just as a reminder that my ancestors see me presenting to people like you every day, and that they had a vision of 7 generations that look forward to these reconnections. And like I said, we're both still here, and that's the beautiful thing, that we can move forward in a positive way as welcoming hunting as a mechanism of conservation. I walk between two worlds. We very delicately do that with conservation and the wise use of the resource being our North Star, our guiding light. And so when we look at that, in many cases in natural resources management, it's not looking for opportunity like this, but it's mitigating losses. And that's what we're forced to do in natural resources management. We live in Western Washington. We're inundated with humans. We have population densities beyond any real area of the country in terms of in the reservation era. So we do that. And I mean, you heard Kurt speak a little bit about public recreation. Public recreation has had one of the greatest impacts of separation between tribes and nature when society views it as a connection to nature. That said, we've made a very, very, very dedicated commitment to work with public recreation and try to get it back to a balance of inclusion where hunting, and I think I'll say something else about treaty rights and why we're looking to work with the state and with the citizens, is because treaty rights don't operate in a vacuum. It's a shared resource. The public trust doctrine is a very powerful thing. These natural resources are part of the public trust. They are a trust of the public. Anything less than that, in terms of privatization of public resources, is operating under the King's model, and we don't want to do that. I mean, we showed how terrible wildlife management was in Europe and how it continues to be in some areas of the globe. And the North American model has worked incredibly well, including hunters, including funding mechanisms, including things Kurt so eloquently highlighted. And with that, but I can speak about these things for hours, but one thing I wanted to make sure we had time for, and I shared this with Aaron, is to make sure we hear your concerns. We hear what you guys have on your mind, because it's very important that we listen to you and try to mitigate any future conflict, move forward in a positive way. The last thing we want to do is exercise our treaty rights and get access to these pure proteins that feed our body, our soul, our being, and in a bad way. And so that said, I'm going to stop there and move forward and gladly field any questions that you guys have. And I'm a very open book. I'm a very candid, and so really no questions are off limits, and please feel free. And so I'll stop there and thank you guys very much.
Can I help you, Margo?
I'm gonna stop sharing the screen so it changes what our online participants can see. So as we come into the
Okay. I was just gonna say, for our online participants, our chat function is not working, so during this Q&A period, if you have questions or comments, if you can raise your hand in Zoom, that'll put you in a line, and we will call on you, and you will unmute, and then you will speak to the group that way. And then Aaron. Yeah, start on the room on here.
So we'll start taking questions for in person, and we're gonna limit the time to 3 minutes. And thank you all for sitting here and listening to us and waiting for this opportunity to have a dialogue.
So, I'm Nellie Novak, and
Thank you for introducing yourself. I meant to ask.
in my former, one of my lives, I was a guide and outfitter for a hunting program in eastern Washington, in the Colville, well, not in the Colville Reservation, but in that area. And we lived way out in the country. We had 90 acres, and we were surrounded by this road, and we had Appaloosa horses and a mule train, and you could take people out. There had been an outbreak of black tongue, and there were a lot of deer that were dying in the area. So it was really kind of a good collaboration. But also, people would drive around that road behind our property hunting, and I have we had 7 kids and like, 15 horses. And, it was really, I saw both sides of how that all worked. So I am really in favor of some kind of guided, effort to bring people who aren't familiar with the territory. One time we had a friend who was hunting, some other people were hunting far away, and they all had orange camo on. But this one guy stuck his head up behind this log and a bullet went right by him and could have killed him. It was people far away that hadn't really paid enough attention where they were at. So I just really would like to suggest that there be involvement at some level, so people are getting, using the equipment correctly and using the property.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. Questions, let's start with questions too, and introductions.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Darcy Leach. I've lived here for 6 years now, but spent most of my childhood in the islands and have a deep love for this place. And I want to start by saying thank you to those of you that have presented. You put my mind at ease about a number of things, but I just really appreciate the thoughtfulness that it's scientifically based, that you've put a lot of thought into it, and that you're holding this and being open to input. I have several quick questions. I'll just lay them all out. One, I realize it wouldn't address the ecological concerns on Turtleback and North Shore, but I'm wondering if an option would be to limit this on non-public access preserved lands, or if we could limit it to locals and tribes and not open it up to tourists from outside the county. That's one question. Two is, how would we be policing on a day-to-day basis, and who would take responsibility for doing that? That the hunters have licenses, that they're not drinking, that they're only taking what's allowed, that they're cleaning up after themselves, and that they're following every kind of safety regulation. And then lastly, are you proposing that we go to a goal of 10 deer per square kilometer? Is that the goal that you're planning on using as a guideline, and how often are they going to be counted and by whom?
Thank you. Yes, actually, you're on point for question number 2.
Yep.
Related to the reservations, locals.
Let me make sure I got things correct. So I'm gonna actually take number 1 and 2 because they're both related.
Perfect.
So the state is not allowed to use the public resources for specific individuals. We're not allowed to itemize or designate certain individuals without an open and fair raffle system. So there's no way, and in fact, it would be counter to state policy for us to manage a hunt where only a certain segment of the population could participate and not the general public.
Even if it's county-owned land?
That's correct. If we are managing the site, and that's the other thing that I want to take a step back on, is Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Land Bank aren't proposing any land use model or change. I want to be clear, our program, Department of Fish and Wildlife and the private lands program, is already actively managing hunting on private lands and some public lands on the islands. So this isn't a new concept, and it's not something that is really something that we have not had experience in managing. I just wanted to say that so that you didn't get a false understanding of what this is designed to do. So I think that answered probably your question.
Department of Fish and Wildlife, is that what you said?
Yes, that's correct. Yep. My name is Brandon Rusco.
And I'll just piggyback on Brandon's, be very brief, and I'll tell you, we, as tribes, similarly what Chris laid out, have multiple MOUs with private landowners and timber companies, just different things, have all varying degrees of restrictions, which some of those are going to be presented by the land trust. We've done that. I'll tell you just very specifically, people tend to act completely different when that, your place and time are known in full transparency, right? So that's why we propose we'd share with the land bank and both the individual taking the action as well as a point of contact with the tribe. So there'll be two layers of just acknowledgement. And then as the individual wants to, it just, they tend to, when you have a spotlight on anybody, they just tend to act considerably better. And so, and we have a long history of doing that with timber companies and other private landowners up in the area. So there is some layers of the onion that we can rest assured it's not perfect. Everything is imperfect, but we have executed this with some success.
That did remind me that one of the questions you had actually specific for the reservation system we use. It's a statewide program that the department has under the private lands program. And we manage a number of properties, even in this region and then in this district specifically. And that's my job, is to manage the reservations that occur. And in order to use the reservation system, you have to be legally licensed to hunt, which Kurt talked about all the requirements associated with that. And then additionally, when people use the reservation system that I manage or that we manage, we have access to all their personal information, who their guests are that they're bringing. And oftentimes, particularly on something like this, was so limited, we'd probably be working proactively with our enforcement so that they have a list of folks who were reserving the units. We'll know 10 days in advance who's on any given reservation.
So, yeah,
I could speak to your question about success metrics and monitoring of the population. So I showed just a slide from Long et al. That showed how Blakely was monitored. They would walk transects, straight lines across the entire island. And because there were land ownerships that are large and communication and approval is easy, that's something that they could do for that and get some representative deer density estimates. That's not something we could do on Orcas. There's too many landowners. The habitat is just too hard to go in straight lines in. What we could do, and it hasn't been proposed here, but a valuable success metric that could be utilized is looking at forage rates for sentinel species like oak seedlings, and to see if you are within 15% of browse rates. Then if it's below that, then you have a relatively healthy population, or that the ecosystem can bounce back and have some resilience to herbivory. If you're beyond that percentage, then some more harvest needs to happen. There needs to be some more adaptive management framework instilled so that you can get down there. So that's an option that we could look at. For now, the way it's structured, we would be using harvest statistics to assess what the population is doing, which is a coarse estimate for such a small area.
What does harvest statistics mean?
So every year, whenever hunters harvest their animals, they report it back to the department. And then we can look at those per management unit, and Orcas Island is one management unit where we can see, okay, this many animals were harvested. This is what the hunters' efforts were. And it'll give us a general trend in harvest for that season.
And those, sorry to interrupt, but the slide that you showed, that was the harvest data for Orcas specifically that you showed on your slide, where before we had the disease, we were like 156, and then it went down to 11. Right. So you'll be able to track just with that data that's already supplied with harvest that's already taken on Orcas.
Exactly.
And compare those data and track that easily.
Yeah, and then with this harvest data, it's pretty limited based on how many properties you have access, how many places people are hunting. So the more access that is out there, the better that data is, the tighter confidence intervals are. So having more across the island in random spots gives us better data to work with.
Before we get to the public access preserve question, I was wondering if you had anything you wanted to offer more about enforcement.
Yeah. We plan on working closely with managers, and we're not reinventing the wheel, but this is relatively new, this model, especially here. So yet to be determined, but we're gonna do our best to participate.
Thank you.
Not sure if I can say much more than that at this point.
And Peter, would you address the public?
Yes. So most land bank reserves are open to the public. Almost all land bank reserves are surrounded by private property, unless it's water or another public property. The preserves that are not open to the public are mostly not open because there's no way to get the public to them. They're accessible via private roads, often with multiple landowners. those landowners haven't been open to making those public roads. So that's why we're not considering that on preserves that are not open to the public. There's just no way to get people in there.
Okay, let's have another question from the room. So we'll do 3 and then maybe we can go to the online. Sir?
I'm Ron Moncrief. I'm a 20-year resident of Orcas. What happens to the carcasses that are professionally culled?
Professionally called in terms of hunting?
No. Well, they're not hunted, they're culled.
Oh, you're talking about the program where,
Aphis.
okay.
Yeah.
There is professional calling, yeah.
Yeah, so there are not any proposals for professional culling. I was going.
No, my question is, what happens to the carcasses?
So it depends on the program. They can be, field dressed and taken to a food shelter or donated. But it really depends on the program. And that's not something that we're proposing.
Yeah, it's not being proposed, but to give you an example, this actually occurred in 2014 in the Skagit Valley with elk. Aphis came in, the actual federal agency that does the culling, professional culling, who the state contracts with, and all of those were donated to area tribes, just distributed equally. That said, the tribes weren't appreciative of that just because of the mechanism. We wanted the opportunity to actually harvest. The experience is worth as much as anything, and it's kind of a last resort in terms of population management.
Do you think there's any way to shunt the carcasses from the hunting program into local food bank kind of arrangements?
When the state hunter buys their license, they're buying access to the animal that they harvest. And 90% of the reason why hunters choose to move forward with that is so that they can harvest their own protein. And so, that wouldn't be a very, viable option, in terms of, participation from a hunter.
You couldn't write it in as a tax, say that some portion of the carcass be donated to local.
I know from my part, that'd be a extremely difficult thing to even consider, so I wouldn't even go there. I'll let Tino speak for the tribe.
Well, yeah, no, and just something we ran into going back several decades with donations. A lot of food banks and as well as the jail and things, places like that where donations had occurred historically require USDA inspected food to come through their lines, where the tribes are more streamlined and comfortable handling it, like a carcass disposition, we're very comfortable with. So there's a lot of logistics that can get in the way with get in the way of different seemingly pragmatic solutions.
Okay, Margot says there's no hands raised.
If any online participants have a question, now's a good time to raise your hand using the react button.
Otherwise, we'll take more from the room. Okay. Sir, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan Black. I am the oldest in a 5th generation Washington family that homesteaded in 1870. And my great uncle served as the director of the Washington Game Department for over 30 years, Arthur Coffin. And I would say that, the opportunity to hunt on your home island here is something that not many of us have. It's we have the opportunity to hunt one small parcel on this island and at Killebrew, and not many of us have had much success there. And the opportunity to hunt in another area on the island that provides a larger population, I think would be welcome. The other thing that I'd like to say is that my family has a long history of stewardship. In fact, our homestead occupied the entire Palacom Highlands. Sorry. Over 150,000 acres of which was donated back into conservation.
Thank you.
And I think continuing the tradition of hunting and our family's long relationship with the Nez Perce tribe offers another generation an opportunity to share that relationship that we wouldn't otherwise have. And I would strongly advocate in favor of this proposal for that very single reason. Just the reestablishing of the relationship between white hunters and the native peoples, because that connection has been lost and it needs to be reestablished. And I think it would help us to recultivate a very, very important element of stewardship for the lands that we possess, that were theirs.
Thank you.
One online. Steve Olby, I see you have your hand raised. Can you unmute and share your question with us, please?
Thank you. I will try. This is a very interesting discussion. I've been involved with such things in Alaska for 50 years before now with Native peoples and national parks. And I live here on San Juan now, and I've been harvesting deer on my property and around for 20 years. I like meat, so does my wife. I like the land bank is one of my favorite ideas ever produced anywhere, and I've been a strong supporter for my entire 20 years here. I obviously am a strong supporter of tribal rights, and I love to see the reawakening of all that. However, I have a problem with an exclusive hunt on county public lands for tribal members. And I listened to the introductions and the explanations. Tell me where in the Point Roberts Treaty it says that tribal opportunities for fish and wildlife can be exclusive to other peoples who may live in those landscapes. And the second part would be a little easier, I guess. Show me in the land bank mission statement or land bank policies where it says that it would allow under certain circumstances exclusive rights to take vegetation or wildlife from land bank properties. Thank you.
First question.
So, yeah, great question. I'll do my best to answer. This is Tino Villaluz. And so under the Treaty of Point Elliott and through a series of court cases which established sovereign nations within the United States, sister sovereign to the state. So as a state can promulgate a regulation, each tribe has the same sovereign legal framework that they can operate under. To be clear, and that's why I said treaty rights don't operate in a vacuum. They are not exclusive, even though the seasons might differ. In US v. Washington and fisheries, it's strictly adjudicated on an allocation basis. Under terrestrial species, it's quite different and a little more ambiguous, and that's why I reference a document called the co-management agreement. And so through different agreements, and those agreements are voluntary agreements entered in as more of a commitment to conservation than anything, and a commitment to shared resource. It is a shared resource, you're absolutely right, but as for a tribe's individual ability to promulgate a regulation, we can do that unilaterally across the whole Point Elliott Treaty area, but we don't have just a wide open season. And in this case specifically, we're committed to a very, very limited opportunity in conjunction or with the blessing, however you want to reference it, with the conservation lands that the land bank manages, and there's appreciation there. But the opportunity we have is under the authority of a sister sovereign to like the state where we promulgate our own regulations. So each tribe has the opportunity to, Swinomish, all the treaty tribes listed under Treaty of Point Elliott.
So may I follow up just quickly?
Yes.
Thank you. Aaron, thank you. Good answer. And very thorough. I appreciate that. It's such a small number of deer that will be harvested. It's a small number of acreage. And of course, at least here on San Juan, we're still suffering from a repeat of identifiers. So we have very few deer around compared to what we thought we would have. And perhaps they're bouncing up on Orcas better. And I totally am in support of hunting of deer on preserves as much as we can. I just still have a little bit of a problem. And I hope this is a precedent, isn't it? Where previously there have not been restricted tribal hunts on county public land, and now there would be?
That's correct.
That's correct.
November 1st through the 18th.
Okay, good. Well, there's nothing wrong with pushing the boundaries and all of that. But anyway, thank you for responding to my question.
And just to be clear, there's like a local, but it's like Washington State folks have the space and then it's exclusive another time for the tribes.
That's correct.
So I don't.
So your
quite
clarifying
understand.
question
Yeah.
is that there is a public
There's a public
season.
Yeah.
It doesn't include North Shore. North Shore is only included in the tribal hunt, but we are providing.
Yeah.
We are proposing to provide opportunities for public hunters as well as tribal.
On the reserve, on the North Reserve?
Not on North Shore, no, just under the umbrella, yeah. So the state hunters are the turtleback, October season this year.
Could you go over those timelines again and the number of hunters that are allowed?
Sure.
Throughout that time, both for North Shore and Turtleback?
Yes, so the public or the state hunt is proposed for it's what's called early modern season, and you probably have those dates off the top of your head.
It's essentially the last couple of weeks of October.
Yeah.
It's the middle Saturday in October to the end of the month.
Yeah.
Okay.
11th through the 31st in the presentation.
It did, yeah, that was 2025. So that said, we're talking about October seasonality for the state hunt. For that, we're limiting the number of hunters to one hunting party that can include 2 individuals. And that somewhat addresses, I think, one of the concerns that you witnessed outside of Colville area.
Right.
So that the hunters are together. So that is the state public hunting. The tribal hunt proposal is also for 1 hunt party, including 2 individuals. And that could be either on Turtleback or North Shore, November 1st through the 18th.
Could I ask one follow-up question for Tina?
Can you say that?
Oh, yeah.
What? Go ahead.
And the other time constraint is just, on our reservation system will go in 2-day increments. So
Oh, yeah.
the maximum of 9 parties up to.
Could I ask?
Does that,
Tina?
yeah, does that answer your question, sir? Or-
October, middle Saturday in October to the end of the month. So sometimes the 14th, sometimes the 11th, the last couple weeks of October.
Can you just clarify, it's 1 hunt, 2 people during this period of time? Just, I'm gonna say it on purpose, just 2 people can hunt over those 2 weeks?
Per day.
Per 2 days.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you.
So per day at a time, so the most there could be, if that was 13 days, the most that could be out there is 26 people. Correct.
Total, in
Oh.
total.
Yeah, on each separate day, just to
Yes.
clarify.
Yeah, so if we get, so for the non-native.
For non-native.
Hunters, if it goes for 14 days, we'll have 24 hunters that end up going out during those 14 days.
28.
And
Thank you. Understood, 28. I was an
I
accountant.
would assume that the proposals for the hunting party sizes and whatnot are still, we're still in discussions about this. And I wonder if I might throw out there, to my earlier comment, if there was an opportunity for those of us in our hunting community that would embrace an opportunity to hunt with one of the natives.
as well. I think that would, if there was an opportunity for exchange and hunting together, I think that would, I mean, again, we don't have a lot of opportunities for these two communities to intermix with one another and to learn from each other. And this is a rare opportunity to embrace that.
Thank you for your comment. We have about 6 minutes left that we kind of compartmentalized for questions. So I want to see whoever has questions left to raise your hand. We'll get there. Seems like there's 4, 5 in the room. Okay, another one, 6, 7. Okay. Any online?
No one has their hand raised right now.
Okay, let's move quickly through the rest of our questions. I'm just gonna work the room this way.
I had more, hi, Janet Horowitz, Turtleback is my backyard. So I have a concern over this 100-yard boundary. Right, you said 100 yard?
100 feet, at
100
minimum,
feet, oh.
at minimum.
100 feet, okay. Because when I just Googled, rifles, distance,
Sure.
it can go a little bit more than.
Modern rifles are prohibited in San Juan County and in fact.
Say that again?
It says modern rifles. It's bows or shotguns. Modern rifles are prohibited west of the Interstate 5.
Okay.
And
How far does a shotgun go?
Modern high-powered
And how
rifles.
far would a shotgun?
So there are challenges associated, I understand, with distances, but there's also topographical features on this property that make just speaking ultimately, it's gonna be 100 yards here, and it's not gonna be that. We have experience managing these type of hunts, and as we true these properties, we're gonna make adjustments where needed based on the existing safety feature that exists. So, please don't look at this as an in concrete, unit or proposal. We are constantly trying to inform our efforts to ensure that when we do, move forward, meaning the program, if you guys choose to move ahead, that we're doing it with the most, care and conscientiousness as possible, because mixing uses, I'm gonna be quite honest with you, when I say mixing uses, non-hunting and hunting public is a tremendous challenge. And so we don't take that lightly. And so this will be something that, not just the neighboring parties, but also those other people recreating, that we're gonna be truncating the unit or adjusting it and working with the land bank to figure that out.
Thank you.
So we will work with you as neighbors.
Can I add something? I'm sorry. I'm Nick. I'm a hunter's education instructor, and to answer your question a little bit more is when I teach my students is to know where you're at, know where you're going, understanding the boundaries, and so they know which direction is the wrong direction, which direction is the correct. If that could just help.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir, did you have a question?
I had a few questions, but I want to ask you, with the public by April 6th, getting your comments and everything in, whatever the few questions I have, can I just include it in that when I get responses from that?
Yeah, definitely.
Then I'll spare you. And I don't want to end up on court TV or anything.
Me neither.
But if there's a particular way you're gonna aim, can I let you know what room to hit in my house? That gets me in the future, so yeah.
Thank you.
I'm gonna finish the April 6th.
Okay,
Ma'am?
what's the, are the marksmen whom I would trust more than the public? I'm sorry. Are they expensive? They're gonna shoot. I mean, if shooting's gonna happen, I would prefer to have someone who knew what they were doing, safely do it.
So are you framing a marksman for a coal versus a public hunting opportunity?
Yes. Anyway.
Would you
Yeah.
like to share that?
I can help with that. So that's not a part of the proposal, but it is very expensive. It's something that you need to do over time. And often whenever it's done, it's used as a piece of an adaptive framework. So maybe there'll be public hunting on the site. And then after that, then they'll have some culling, or depending on the scenario, maybe some fertility control, which is much more rare, but you wouldn't want to use just one or the other. And using them together is where you have the most effectiveness. But if you're going to start, everything usually has a public hunting component to it, because it generates funding. people are willing to do it, it feeds families, and it has the same outcome of reducing the population, while generating money.
I would also add that there is already a large population of resident hunters who live on this island. And many of us hunt with shotguns across many of the private properties across the island, many of the larger ones in particular, including I personally hunt on 4 or 5 of the properties that directly abut Turtleback Mountain today. And so, and we have never, ever had a single incident in any of those. And these are on properties that are owned by significant, well-known landowners who want the large migratory waterfowl property or populations managed. And again, this is a very important element of conservation because right now, the ecosystem on the island is out of balance and there are no natural predators for these animals. And there is no other practical or pragmatic way to control these populations other than hunting them. And also,
Sir,
yeah.
I need to get to the questions in the back, but thank you, and we can circle back with comments. Okay, there was a cluster in the corner, please.
Yeah, so, so I have a number of questions as well. One is to Kurt. So it seems like the information you gave is sort of island county-wide, and I didn't really see the direct relationship to Turtleback and North Shore.
Okay.
And so maybe you can address that a little bit. And a couple other questions. So I do have an educational background in wildlife management. And what I have understood in the past is that populations tend to regulate themselves. So if you have times where they're not able to get much food or the food is low value, there are fewer that are born, fewer births at that point. So until the vegetation comes back up and then the population starts coming up again. The other question I had was disease. I also see disease as a natural selector, very, very similar to predator prey. And not as a bad thing because it selects for the weakest. And so it creates a stronger population. So I wonder if you could address that as well.
Yeah, so I guess I'll speak to disease first. You're right, through disease, you can have large die-offs. And I think my point in the presentation was that avoiding getting to that point where you have so many deer that the transmission rate is so high that you have large die-offs is ideal. I wouldn't consider like an adenovirus hemorrhagic disease outbreak as being the factor that, you know, it's the silver bullet and does fix the population or bring things back to a stable position, because it's not just deer that we're trying to balance. We're trying to balance the vegetation, you know, invertebrates, the food for invertebrates, the habitat for birds. So it's not just, you know, disease comes and reduces deer population a bit. That may already still be too many deer for the island or for that area or for the conservation goals of the area. One specific example would be on southern San Juan, where we have the critically endangered island marble butterfly and no mechanism to really manage those deer herds. And they're eating eggs and larvae on these mustard host plants that are having a significant impact on that population of 300 to 500 individuals total. So in some areas where there may be lower numbers from disease, maybe it should be lower because of the other species that need that support or that need that uplift from deer that are damaging the habitat. Could you give me your other two questions?
Yeah, I think I could have one of them, and it has to do with hunting on turtleback and why it's so ecologically or so important. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Kind of
it seemed like.
Well, the reality is this, and I'm gonna be quick because we are running short on time. Private landowners across the country have a tremendous opportunity and ability to conserve resources, natural resources. And so it's through that private land lens that my program works. And so we're always willing to look across the landscape and try to find partners this is a great opportunity for, I think, the land bank and the tribes and Department of Fish and Wildlife to help educate landowners on the islands and residents on the island, as much as it is just to ecologically control a small place. Because the reality is we'd like to see good management across all of the islands. And so what that leads to is perhaps other private parties, other pieces of property opening their doors to hunting. And it's those kind of ends that I know that my program in support of Kurt and what he's trying to do, that's how we try to do this. Try to take one piece like this, 150 acres, show the folks that it works, try to work out so-called kinks and questions from the community, and try to get support from others to join.
Just to follow up, and this is really sort of a random question that maybe I'll direct to Justin here in a way. So I think probably from my perspective, I was a land use planner for the county and then also as a consultant for many years. I see one of the biggest impacts being development. So you have development, you lose that habitat, but I don't see the county has very few regulations that actually require a replacement of that habitat, a replacement of native vegetation. And I could see that really being a help in terms of the overall ecological diversity throughout the county. So instead of just focusing on dealing with this in planning, look at regulations that allow increased habitat throughout the entire county. And possibly the land bank could assist for that because they have that expertise as to what can be done to actually increase the biological and ecological diversity throughout the county. And maybe the county council could also address that.
Thank you for your comments and questions. There was another one on the second row. Did you, first we'll do this gentleman in the back and then.
Clark Cundy. I have a question. I think it's about efficacy of the plan. And I was gonna ask Kurt maybe what's the goal of the deer population up on Turtleback? What are you trying to achieve there? And if there's two people in a hunting party for 14 days, you've got 56 total. Is that going to actually have any impact on what's going on with the rest of the environment that you're trying to improve?
Yeah, I can give you a specific example, one that comes up in my mind frequently when I consider this opportunity. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with the butterfly Propertius dusky-wing. It is an obligate to Gary oaks. It has its whole life cycle. It lays its eggs on the oaks. It feeds on them as an adult. Its larvae use them and pupates under the leaves. It is intimately tied to Gary oaks, and it's the species of greatest conservation need. And deer love eating oak seedlings. It's their favorite food, and there's a lot of plantings that happen on Turtleback, and that is one species of greatest conservation need that there would be clear uplift for a project like this. Now, you had a great point. What does this mean for the broader landscape, for the whole unit on a whole? It would be a drop in the bucket, but it's a step in the direction of more ecological diversity.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, question, comment, maybe some of the folks from the state can guide us in the right direction, but it sounds like a lot of the questions have to deal with curiosity around hunting safety. And I've seen a lot of comments online as well around, as a hunter, misconception of hunting and hunters. I know that all of the information for the Washington State Hunters Education is free. Do you have any additional resources that people should be looking at in terms of what is required for non-hunters to understand what is required of a hunter in order to get their license and hunt the landscape?
That's the spot to do it. We have, I mean, why try to say there's something else if there's not? I mean, that's the go-to place. I mean,
anyone born after January 1st, 1972 has to complete hunter education before they're allowed to acquire a hunting license.
That being said, related to specific hunts like this one, we try to provide additional information through the state's private land page. So we do try to do as much education and information providing to the reservation holders before they go to the property so that they're equipped. I know that's not necessarily a safety, specific, but it does play into it.
We've also worked with our communications program with DFW, and I believe, we put together a flyer that's just basic information about how, like hunting in San Juan County, what the rules are, what the regulations are, and how to be safe and all the safety aspects of it, along with some research links that may be related, like hunting incidents in Washington State over the years. That I believe is posted on your new webpage, or a link to it is posted on the Land Bank's new webpage about hunting. That'd be a great resource. Feel free to reach out to me directly too. I'll share everything I have. I've got cards. So, yeah, reach out anytime. I'd be happy to provide those resources.
I know you want to move on to the public comment. I would just real quickly answer by saying that, you know, we're partnering with the Land Bank. This is their decision, and we are trying to provide the resources we can and the assistance and partnership we can to facilitate this hunt. So don't be mistaken. We're not driving this forward. That, with that frame, I want to make sure that for our program, meaning the private lands program that would be managing this, we're going to be available resource for the community. We've got months until the hunt. I'm ready to come out here. I'll be out here moment's notice, if I can, to meet up with folks and answer questions related to what things might look like, because like I said, this isn't just a Turtleback Mountain story for the department. This is a bigger, I see you nodding. So obviously for the tribes too, this is a bigger landscape level effort that we're trying to make sure takes hold. And anytime we try to step forward and we're not doing so with the due diligence we need to, that's a risk, right? And so we want to minimize our risks in trying to provide opportunity for the public, while also handling.
Do you want to offer anything?
Yeah, no, I would just say, you know, to several of the questions, this isn't a fix for conservation, you know, island-wide or even on isolated parcels. This is embracing the power possible though, and showing that we can move forward in a positive direction. We can move forward with all the tools in our toolbox that create a calculated, well-managed and well-intended hunt that should result in some of the things that Kurt referenced in that ecological diversity. And I will speak just briefly on the disease. That's a really poor strategy to depend on disease for population control when we can build population diversity, we can build herd health, and at the same time face diseases and be more resilient to diseases as a population. Like I said, and then for the tribe, specifically my tribe, it's deeper, right? It is that connection back to a land where we've been extirpated from, right? You want to see an endangered species, try to find an Indian on the island. I've been trying all day. And these, like, all joking aside, these are our historic homes, and we've learned that, you know, it is a managed system, and a managed system, conservation becomes difficult. The other thing I will say, that change is difficult. And that's why this is such a small step, an incremental step to promote change. Like I said, in my view, and I will always advocate for hunting writ large and more specifically, the tribal connection to their food sources. So that change is difficult, and I know, and that's why I came here today. I mean, because the opportunity is not, it is not a huge win for any individual tribe or tribal member, but it might be the correct step forward to facilitate that change that will, like I said, will reconnect and reinvigorate this relationship with this island and now the island culture and the island life. And as you said so eloquently, you know that those cultures can cross again, right? Because it is going to take that, right? Because it is going to take steps forward like this to realize that, you know, the cross culture and then the commonalities with the state and other constituents, including land managers, land management. So yeah, this is just an opportunity. It's not a fix. It doesn't build a resilient population. This is an incremental step forward where I think we have incrementally stepped backwards so far that we've lost sight of the goal.
Thank you. So just a time check, we have about 15 minutes left for our meeting. At this point, we'll have comments as well as questions, and I'd like to ask if there's anyone that hasn't already had an opportunity to speak, that we offer you that now, and then maybe go back to, we'll do Jeff.
Hi, so, main thing I want to point out is that I'm really glad these people, really brought up the fact that it's not just about the deer. It's about every plant that supports every animal, bird, insect, amphibian, and mammals. That's what it's really about. This is really, really important. Bonnie and I have lived on Orcas Island for 38 years. And out of my 70 years, I've been intimately involved with plants, trees, landscapes, forests, the entire time. And I see every single day what the deer are doing to the ecology of this island. Now, it's gotten a little better since the die-off, but it shouldn't take a die-off to get us to understand what's going on out there. I see deer damage and point it out to people who I work with, and they completely ignore it. It's not a good thing. When we love one animal and completely disregard the entire ecosystem, that's not understanding and it's not loving nature. It's one-sided and it's really wrong. And so anyway, one really quick story. I'll make it really fast. A client of mine asked, why don't I have madrona trees, little madrona seedlings? There are big madrona trees right over there. This is a perfect spot for madronas. And years go by and I don't see any madrona trees coming up. To Bill, it's because the deer eat every single one. He's like, nah, you just don't like the deer. So one day during germination time, I said, hey, Bill, let's go out there and see if we can find some little seedlings. And sure enough, about an inch tall with two little leaves. I said, Bill, right there's a madrona seedling. I don't see it. Oh yeah, it's right there. We got down on our hands and knees. We counted 40, 50, 60 of them. I said, okay, you go to the hardware store, you buy some fence, and you cage every madrona tree that you want to keep. And then a week later, you go back and you see how many madronas have disappeared. And the only ones that did not disappear were the ones that were in the cage. This is what's happening day in and day out on this island as our forests are dying because of old age. So that's my spiel.
That was exactly 3 minutes. I was trying to. Put up the flag.
Yeah, I second that. I'm out on the land and see deer damage like consistently. It's an issue, and it's our also responsibility to participate in the habitat that we all participate in. I'd also like to advocate for a tribally exclusive time period. Just as that on record, from relationships I have, it's like, important cultural specific time that us white folks don't need to be a part of. So I just wanna advocate for that and, so, yeah.
So folks online, feel free to raise your hand, and then anyone in the room. And again, we're gonna kind of prioritize folks that have not had an opportunity to.
Now, is this just
speak.
questions or when are the comments?
We've moved into comments. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
Because it seemed like there were comments throughout the whole.
There was, and I didn't want to.
Suzanne Chamberlain.
Right over here, I would like to turn my time over to him, to Jeff Otis.
Okay, sure. We'll move that direction and we're gonna
I just wanted to say +1, Jamie said.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone online?
It sounds like someone might be trying to speak, but I can't see who is, nobody has their hand raised, so if they wanna just start talking right now.
I think it's on the screen.
Okay. Okay, raise your hand for a question or comment so I can see, sir, and we'll just move through.
First of all, my name is Dick Banger, and my family's owned property adjacent to the preserve for
North Shore.
65 years. The area is very fragile, as everyone knows. Point Dowdy is a natural preserve under the DNR. I attended a meeting last April where they made it very clear that they didn't want anybody going on that property unless they came by kayak, and no fires. They took away all the garbage cans, so they're very protective of that area. And it's very interesting, when you read the report, I didn't realize how fragile it really was. My concern as a property owner adjacent to the preserve is that Peter has explained to me how they're going to put up barriers, or not barriers, stakes,
Yeah. I saw.
that show where the preserve line is and where the standback line is. In other words, hunters do not go beyond this line. That's great. Mike, I've seen this happen before. A hunter takes a shot, he injures the animal, he goes after the animal, before you know it, he's on my property. We have a pond that attracts deer. It's a great place for a hunter. We have not allowed hunting on our property for 65 years, and we're not intending to allow it on our property.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make darn sure that whatever you come up with, we have a chance to comment on. I've just seen your comments. I haven't seen anything in writing that establishes the policy that you talked about. And I hope before we get done with this, that you'll be able to come back to us and say, okay, this is what we came up with, and give us a chance to comment.
Definitely.
Thank you.
And because North Shore is only proposed for tribal hunt, Tito, do you have?
Yeah, I'll respond. So you're absolutely right, sir. Wound loss is an absolute element of hunting, right? And sometimes the shots are imperfect. It's always imperfect situation of hunting. It's in nature. And it's interacting with nature where elements are outside of our
On the North Shore.
So in the case that happens, I mean, I think we will, because your comment will be very descriptive in how we instruct the hunt. And at that point, if it does go onto a neighboring property and die, I mean, our next course of action would be to call an official, usually WDFW or the local sheriff, and you would have the opportunity to either allow retrieval of that animal or not, and allow scavengers to take it, which would be well within your rights all the way around. But we will always do our best to respect the neighbors and their private property. So, again, this is not a unique situation in terms of hunting a very settled and very complex land ownership landscape. We operate in Skagit Valley daily, where properties are probably more fragmented than even on the island. It's really an incredible dynamic landscape that we hunt, and that's probably where our tribe extracts most of its resources in terms of deer and elk.
Thank you. Okay, we had some hands raised in the back.
So I have this is very personal to me in terms of public safety. My property abuts Turtleback on the south east side. And in 1999, southeast side. 1999, prior to what is now Turtleback, there was a hunter just above my property. My property is forested right at the Turtleback boundary. It's forested with sloping. Somebody actually shot a bullet through the forest while they were shooting at the Missouri Theater. It went through my house and through my office area. I was in the kitchen and was headed in that direction. It stopped at a beam, so it didn't make it down to the kitchen. It felt like an explosion inside of my house. So this really frightens me, and it really concerns me. My other neighbors who left just a while ago, they're even higher up than me, and their house is even more exposed than mine is. It's just, I really can't believe that this is being proposed on Shoalback. It's crazy.
Again, you're talking a rifle shot, they're talking, bows.
Okay, well, let's look at what happened in 2023 on Orcas Island. Shotgun, hunter was shooting downslope through a forested area, missed the deer, killed the hunter, 2023. With a shotgun. Are you familiar with that? Also, 2 years back, driving along Cold Valley Road, there was a truck in front of me. Truck slams on its brakes. 3 or 4 people jump out of that truck with guns, run up the hill, leave the car going after a deer on the slope. That's what I'm concerned about, that kind of thing. And even though you put up boundaries, I don't see, there's really no way that you can control that kind of thing. People will go where they want to go, they'll see a deer, they'll follow that, but go outside the boundaries. And maybe all the hunters here are going to be very, very careful. But what happens to just the one who isn't? That's what I'm really concerned about.
Can I respond to that?
Please, it's a comment, it's not a question, right?
Okay.
So we don't have to answer people's comments.
We can respond. I would like to offer Tino time to have a dialogue.
I came here specifically to listen, and sir, I've read your comments multiple times, and they have had an impact. And to that end, we do our best to mitigate public safety. Again, it's an imperfect situation, and I'm truly sorry for your life experiences that have been negatively affected by hunting and the act of hunting. That said, I always look forward and look at life through a lens that trauma is not a competition and we should be sensitive to others and try to still move forward in a positive way. And that's really what we put forward in terms of this very small and incremental hunt on both sides, the state and the tribal side. So I will say that your story has had an impact. Like I said, it's been read multiple times. It's been discussed with WDFW, Kurt and I. It's been discussed with the land bank and I. It's not unnoticed. And like I said, it's and the tragedy on Lopez, that has also been at the forefront. These are not new discussions and not something we're turning a blind eye to. Can I say with absolute certainty that there is no inherent risk with hunting? No, I would never say that. But I will say we do our best to mitigate, and we do have a very strong track record of managing hunts, and that's about the only assurance I can give you, and the assurance that we're listening and we do care deeply about the history, all tragedies impact all of us, and I think as a public safety or hunter safety instructor, we speak to these intimately with our students, so.
But this is not just tribal hunting.
Absolutely.
This is other hunting.
Yes.
And my concern is my love of orcas and turtleback and the North Shore. These have been peaceful, safe, protected sanctuary places. And we're taking for granted, we're not gonna have that.
You'll have them for 6
42
weeks.
I think it's important to point out that there are active hunts on private land on this island that happen for a far greater period of time every year. From the middle of fall until the last week of January every year is migratory waterfowl season. And I personally know of over a dozen hunters who hunt dozens of property adjoining Turtleback every single week. And so there are shotguns being discharged on those properties, private properties, by white people who have access and the privilege to access large tracts of privately owned by white people land for the very same purpose. And the fact that we would deny the original landowners that same right today, personally find somewhat offensive.
We have 1 minute left. Dean?
Yeah, my name's Dean Doherty. I'm the stewardship director for the San Juan Preservation Trust. We have conservation easements on both of these properties, on Turtleback and North Shore. And, the purpose of these conservation easements are manyfold, but one of them is to protect the conservation values of these properties. And we find that allowing hunting is entirely consistent with trying to protect those conservation values. You know, I had all sorts of things I wanted to say until I heard Kurt say every single one of them about all of the health aspects for the, you know, the ecosystem. And, you know, I can just say from personal experience, you go on an island that doesn't have deer, and then you come back to Orcas and they're different. There's oak trees that, you know, can grow, you know, madrone that can grow because the deer aren't, you know, munching them down every day. So we're totally in support of this, this limited attempt to control.
Aaron, I just want to state real, like, you see us all kind of
Yeah, there's a
fucking
ferry.
about, so as much as we like to stay till 10 o'clock, there's a 7:30 ferry. Don't take our, like, exiting as disinterest. We are in contact, all of us, with Aaron and the crew. Please continue to provide comment. They have access to our contact information. Absolutely, we're gonna continue to engage, but I know for my part.
Let me just piggyback on that. Similarly, no disrespect, apologies for having to go. I will be back on island tomorrow, at some point. Aaron has a few of my cards. If anybody wants to reach out to me and ask very specific questions, feel free. Like I said, I'm always open to, constructive dialogue and appreciate all of you guys and your interest.
What's the next step? Are you gonna publish something?
We are gonna accept written comments until April 6th.
I understand that.
And then we'll create a summary document
How do we get access?
with all that. We'll post it on our website. We know you as a neighbor. We'll definitely reach out. And then, yeah, and then our. We won't, but when we start then.
I can also stay later if anybody has any questions.
Pressure.